Hi everyone, Nubkeks here. A couple of days ago on the channel, I did a video talking about my top 5 choices for new classes that Blizzard could add to World of Warcraft. In today's video, we're going to be talking about reworking some of the existing specs. I'm actually going to talk about 3 specs in today's video. We'll also do further videos. I already hinted about this before in the last one. Sorry if you can hear stuff banging. It's really like windy and hailstones and stuff today. It's horrible. We're going to do follow-up videos looking at potential new specs that they could add to the existing classes. But yeah, today we're going to talk about ones that are already in the game but need to change. I've got 3 choices. I imagine this video will be fairly controversial if I'm picking on your favorite spec especially, or something that you really like. So we will see how it goes. Let me know as always in the comments what specs you think should be reworked and what you think about my ideas. Without any further ado, let's go. So the first spec I think should be reworked. It's probably not going to surprise many people that it is my number 1 choice, and that is the Survival Hunter. Whereas lots of other specs have been around in the game for an awfully long time, Survival Hunter itself was a completely remade class in Legion when they made it a melee DPS spec and completely changed how most of its abilities worked. So Survival as we know it now is a pretty young spec in the game, and unfortunately, certainly with the pruning in BFA, Survival was left in a pretty bland state, I'm gonna be honest. Popular in Arena, in PvP, but really considered a meme spec that was almost entirely unplayed in PvE. The same has been true in Shadowlands as well, where Survival Hunter, again, I did videos during the beta looking in depth at every single spec, and it was kind of shocking because we did Hunter near the end. Survival Hunter got almost 0 changes. In fact, half of the Survival Hunter legendaries are just BFA Azerite traits, just rebranded as legendaries. It's pretty rough for them, okay? It's pretty rough. It seemed blatant to me that Survival was supposed to be reworked here for Shadowlands, but they simply ran out of time. You know, they looked at Arcane Mage, Sub Rogue, they looked at, you know, Shadow Priest, all those, and they just ran out of time for Survival Hunter. And just to put this in context, yeah, a step back from World of Warcraft for a moment, and imagine you were about to play Diablo 4 or Divinity Original Sin 3, you know, Elder Scrolls 6 has finally arrived, and you're choosing what class you want to be in one of those games. And imagine there is a class in that game which is all about fighting in melee with a beast companion, a pet. How freaking cool is that? How cool is that? It's super cool. And I guarantee that that would be a super popular class because it's badass. That's awesome. So that really shows, I think, how far wrong Survival Hunter has gone in World of Warcraft, that just nobody, or barely anybody, wants to play the thing at all. It's just, it has not hit that note at all. The biggest issue for me with Survival is that I think that it's just very confused in what its identity is supposed to be. Like, you look at its abilities and it's got, you know, it can carve, it's got butchery, really awesome sounding ability name, right? Butchery. But then you're shooting your little gun, you can become ranged for a little bit of time, you're supposed to be fighting with your pet with coordinated assault, and then you're also throwing bombs and stuff. It's just all over the place. It's like, you know, like a career day at school, and you show up and I don't know, I guess Survival Hunter would be like weirdly Russian for some random reason. He'd be like, "Hey kids, it's me, Survival Hunter. What do I do? Well, I've got this harpoon and I like butcher. I'm super violent in melee. Well, I'm crazy guy, eh? But then, hey, I also have this gun. I kind of shoot things a little bit with my gun. It's crazy. Have you met my pet lion? His name is Simba. Wow, cool. Hey, heavy bomb." It's just like what is going on there? There's like a billion different things going on. It's way too much. So what they should do to rework Survival Hunter, in my opinion, focus in on one particular theme, and I think that should be fighting alongside your pet. That is the most cool and unique and interesting thing that they do. Fighting in melee alongside your beast, you know, embrace some of that brutality, you know, that you are sort of channeling what it means to fight as a beast, you know, tooth and claw, going in with dual wield axes, go in with that spear, whatever, but embrace the brutality of it, embrace the violence, the bleeds, and just that sort of pack teamwork. That is what Survival needs to be. Forget about the little hand crossbow and the throwing bombs and stuff. Those are cool in their own way, but it's just too much. Focus in on what works. You hear my dog barking? He agrees. My dog agrees. And in terms of gameplay, I think there's a huge opportunity to make Survival Hunter a tank. I mean, it's in the name, really, isn't it? Survival. That's what tanks do. They survive. But yeah, make it a tank spec. A really cool tank spec. Where it's about the hunter and their pet working together, right? Instead of a warrior, you know, raising their shield block. That's their mitigation. That's how they survive. For a survival hunter, it should be about your pet stepping in to be your shield. Your pet guarding you, protecting you from damage. And then the hunter gameplay is really about, you know, these brutal attacks, these coordinated attacks, working with your pet and healing your pet up through your aggression. I think that would be super cool, right? Because it's focused on aggression. It's an active, offensive, always moving forward sort of feeling to the spec. It ties into how hunters already play, which is that your pets are the tanks for you. And it also has some unique gameplay there that sets it apart from other tanks, where you're managing your pet's health bar and your own. And let's say we don't let healers heal the actual pet itself, that the only way to heal your pet is through the actions that you take as the hunter. And you could imagine a bunch of the cool attacks that you could do working together with your pet, you know, both striking at the same time. Send your pet to do a big AoE attack, which gathers up the mobs, like your pet does that for you. Pretty cool. And there's even the option, again, to explore some of those aspects, which for me is a very traditional side of the hunter, you know, aspect of the monkey, aspect of the beast, you know, all these different things that you could potentially bring in, kind of embracing the different elements of what it means to be a beast that you bring in yourself as a survival hunter into that sort of melee playstyle. So yeah, let me know what you think about that in the comments down below, guys. That would be my take. You could even, if you don't like the idea of it being a tank, which I personally really strongly do, I think we've got plenty of melee DPS, and, you know, just having more awesome badass tanks like this would be, I think would be a great thing for the game. But that's sort of what I feel. But if you don't want it to be a tank, I think this sort of concept would still work really well as a melee DPS. It still works just fine. But yeah, the key thing for me is get rid of the weird gadgets, focus the theme in, and work hunter plus their pet working together. You know, marksmanship is all about the ranged weaponry. Beast mastery is about controlling lots of different beasts at the same time. And then have survival be about just hunter and pet working in sync, spirit bond, right? Working together to take on enemies together in melee, working as the pack. That's my thoughts. Let's look at the next one. Specs 2 and 3 then for me are both from the same class, and they both go hand in hand. And those two specs are the Subtlety Rogue and the Assassination Rogue. Now, the reason I put these two specs together is to illustrate one of the problems that I think these two specs have, which is that they're just very, very similar to each other in an awful lot of ways, right? Core Assassination Rogue gameplay, you mutilate your target, then you apply your Rupture, and then you know, start firing off some Envenoms. With Sub Rogue, you're going to backstab your target, then you're going to Nightblade, or now it's called Rupture your target, and then spam out some Eviscerates. It's a very similar flow to the thing, right? Assassination Rogue is going to go Fan of Knives. Sub Rogue does a Shuriken Storm. You know, they're basically the same thing, right? Poison Knife for Assassination Rogue. Shuriken Toss for Sub Rogue. Ooh, so different. Not really, not really. The unique part about the specs is in their cooldowns, right? For Assassination Rogue, you're playing around your Toxic Blade window every 20 seconds. That ups your nature damage, so your poisons. And then Vendetta, your big cooldown every 2 minutes for big single target damage. Whereas for Sub Rogue, you're playing around really your Shadowlands, which is probably one of my personal favorite cooldowns in the entire game, right? Where you've got 2 charges and it lets you use your moves as if you were in stealth, which just ups the speed of your rotation. They're really powerful opening moves, as they were combo point generating moves. That ups the speed of your rotation. You get more combo points, blasting way more damage. It's super, super fun. But the real question for me here that I have is, do we really need 2 different dagger-wielding melee rogue specs in a world which is just, you know, a World of Warcraft, which is oversaturated with melee specs and lacking in range specs? Let's be real. Do we need 2 melee dagger-wielding rogues that do almost the exact same thing outside of their cooldowns? Is that needed? And I don't think so. So what I want to argue for here today is a pretty simple process, which is reworking Sub Rogue to be a ranged DPS spec. And then focus Assassination Rogue on being the sneaky melee dagger wielding rogue, right? Take some of the abilities from Sub Rogue that just would not work as a range spec. So something like Shuriken Storm, you know, Storm of Knives. Give them a nice big bursty AoE cooldown, spam out multiple Fan of Knives, burst AoE, cool talents and stuff. That's something that Assassination Rogue really misses. They have a terrible talent tree, so does Sub Rogue, right? Combine the two melee sides of it into one spec, give it more variety. We'll come back to that in a minute, and then focus on more unique stuff for the Sub Rogue as ranged. So how would Sub Rogue even work as a ranged spec? Well, honestly, you don't really need to change all that much. You know, plenty of other games even have rogues with ranged archetypes. That's super common. I think even in like Diablo 1, the rogue was a ranged spec mostly. It's not a far stride for how those abilities work at all. If you think about their attacks from stealth, I mean, Ambush could easily be ranged. That does not have to be melee. Cheap Shot even has shot in the name, guys. It's even in the name. In terms of their core gameplay, very little actually needs to change, right? Most of their toolkit would work just fine at ranged with a bow. Yeah, okay, we couldn't backstab things, obviously. I suggest just take the Shadow Strike, that iconic ability for sub-rogues, and have Shadow Strike just be a bow attack, which is your main single target builder. Eviscerate would probably still work as a combo point spender. Kidney Shot, again, has shot in the name, so that works just fine, and you could still rupture things at range 2, why not? For AoE, be where we get a little bit creative, because at the moment for Sub-Rogue, their AoE is expanding in an AoE around them. That obviously wouldn't work for range spec. I think, you know, Shuriken Spray instead of Shuriken Storm would be an easy sort of middle ground here, where you target a target and fire shurikens at targets near them, or have it simply be, you know, a hail of arrows, you know, a spread of arrows, a little volley, kind of like multi-shot. That would work just fine too. I think we could even take Death from Above and rework that to be their AoE spender, right? Do a little backflip and shoot a bunch of arrows out of your bow at once in this big, powerful AoE hit. Have that be your AoE spender in the place of Black Powder. And, I mean, there you go. Honestly, you've got most of the spec already done. Shadow Dance works just the same. Have Ambush be, you know, your main builder in Shadow Dance, and you're pretty good, honestly. Shadow Blades would need a bit of a change, but I don't think anyone is particularly excited about Shadow Blades anyway, so no big deal there. Shadow Arrows, Black Arrows, that works just fine, and also references some of that, you know, Dark Ranger fantasy. That's another big pro as well of this potential rework. Moving sub to ranged, Dark Rangers, that's something that people really want in the game, right? We could actually build a ton of that into Sub-Rogue. Sub-Rogue can be the Dark Ranger just fine. To give you an example, like from Heroes of the Storm, where you can play as Sylvanas, obviously the iconic Dark Ranger. For example, one of her abilities, Shadow Dagger, she throws a dagger at someone, and it puts this dot on them, and then whenever you shoot that target with a ranged attack, it will then like pulse shadow damage to everything near it. We could easily work that in as an ability or a talent for Sub-Rogue as a ranged spec. It'd be pretty cool, right? Or you could have like a shadowy barrage, where in kind of a shadow image of the rogue kind of pops out and shoots an arrow every second for 5 seconds at the closest nearby target. Kind of cool, right? Building into that idea of this very mobile range DPS spec that also weaves in some of that shadowy magic, some of that Dark Ranger goodness. There's a ton of options there. We put all that stuff together, and in my opinion, there are 2 big draws to this potential rework. Maybe even 3, right? Draw number 1, I think first and foremost, is it gives you, instead of having Sub-Rogue, which is, let's be honest, it's just another melee spec. It's even just another combo point dagger wielding rogue spec. It takes that and it makes it not just another spec amongst many, but it makes it a very unique type of range DPS spec. It gives you that super mobile range DPS spec, which only Beast Mastery Hunter is now, even marksmanship to a certain extent, but mostly just BM. It gives you that. It also gives you combo point and energy based class as a range spec, which is super cool. A stealth based range spec as well. I think that gives it just way more room to breathe. And I guarantee, I mean, I would love to play that spec. I think that would be insane. Let me know what you guys think, but would you, I'm sure even if maybe even you personally wouldn't like it, I'm sure you can imagine that, hey, there would be a lot of people that would love to play a ranged rogue archetype in this game, that would love to play a Dark Ranger type character in this game, that would really enjoy that mobile, sneaky, again, combo point based ranged attacker. That would be super popular. So yeah, that's kind of point number 2. And then point number 3, it would give us more rogues, right? More rogue variety, rogue representation in PvE in the range sort of spot, and bringing that sort of rogue utility as a ranged class. And yeah, also it's a nice little damage profile, right? The sub damage profile of kind of really good bursty single target damage in their cooldown, some decent burst AoE in their shadowlands cooldown. Again, it's not all that unique for a melee spec, you know, with some sort of multi-dotting and lower downtime in between. But it would be pretty unique as a range spec, right? It's pretty unique as a range spec. It's very different even from the hunter range specs, the other options there. So yeah, I think it'd be awesome. So there you go, guys. They are my ideas for 3 specs that could see some small to very large reworks here in World of Warcraft. First of all, Survival Hunter. Make it a tank spec and focus in on the theme and the abilities which are about fighting with your pet. Okay, it's trying to do too many things at once right now, and it just doesn't work, as we can see from barely anyone playing the spec in PvE at all. It just doesn't work. So let's focus it in and have it be a really badass, awesome tank spec, right? Cool way to tank, you know, fighting in melee alongside your beast companion, working together, that strong bond between you, your spirit bonds, just really in sync with your pet, embracing some of the brutality of what it means to fight like a beast, and really working together, trying to keep your pet alive and then your pet protecting you in return, and being this sort of just aggressive, always moving forward sort of tank. I think that would be super cool. So that's what I would love to see with Survival Hunter. At the very least, if they don't want to make it a tank spec, at the very least, have that sort of gameplay style, but have it be as a melee DPS. Again, my strong preference would be for tank. I think it would be an incredible tank, really exciting and fun, and very different in terms of feel to the tanks that we have in the game right now. So that would be awesome. And then for the rogues, my 2 rogue specs I'd like to see reworked, Sub-Rogue being the big rework here, which is really building on a lot of the ideas of the Dark Ranger, one of the most commonly requested classes for the game that I didn't mention in my 5 classes they could add to the game video. I didn't mention it there because I think Sub-Rogue already has the basis there to provide that for the game. At the moment, it's just another melee spec amongst a sea of melee specs. It's another dagger-wielding rogue spec in a game that has 2 dagger-wielding rogue specs with 3 melee rogue specs. We just don't need that many, and it gets lost in the noise, and it just doesn't let the specs have the identity that they deserve. Make Sub-Rogue a range spec. Bring that rogue gameplay of stealth, combo points, energy. Bring that into the range sphere, which gives us more variety with range DPS specs, which is something we really, really need in the game. It frees up a melee DPS slot for potentially a new spec or a new class that could come in and do a melee DPS job. And it also frees up, again, the 3rd spec I mentioned here today, it frees up Assassination Rogue to get some actual new stuff in there, to get some love, to get some of those dagger-wielding rogue ideas actually go to them. They might see some talent variety for the first time in years. They might see some interesting stuff happen for them. Whereas I think before, really, it's been stifled by Blizzard needing to have 2 melee DPS, dagger-wielding rogue specs. It's just... It's one more than we need. We can have one, have it be Assassination, and bring most of sub gameplay honestly intact, but bring it into a ranged role. I think that'd be super cool. I would love to play it too. So there you go, guys. They are my thoughts. Let me know what you think down below. Are there any specs that you think I've left out that you think do need to be reworked, or would you rework these particular specs a different way? Let me know. And again, next video, we will look at new specs that they could add to existing classes, right? New specs for existing classes. I've got a bunch of ideas. We might have to split it over a couple of videos. But yeah, I'll look forward to doing that one. And I hope you guys will come and join me for that as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.